few new subscribers, so I appreciate you all very, very much for joining my channel, my family, my little corner of the tinterwebs. Thank you very much. Today we're going to be going through my best and most, I'm going to say most disappointing, some of the worst. I don't know how I'm going to word this. I don't like focusing on the negatives, but what I don't like, other people might. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to yuck someone's yum. I love that saying. Also, since I've heard that saying, sorry, I'm adjusting you as I talk because that's normal. Since I've heard that saying, I have seen it in films, I've watched it I've seen it in an episode on a series, and I read it in multiple books. Prior to my friends saying it, I can't remember which of my friends said it at one point in the group chat, but they were like, don't yuck my yum, or I'm not going to yuck someone's yum. And I just hear it all over now. That is besides the point. That is not what we're here to talk about. Today we're here to talk about my books. My thoughts and feelings and ponderances on the books that I perused with my eyeballs in the year of whatever year it was. What was it? 2022. Okay, so first of all, I'm just gonna quickly go through books that were my disappointing books of 2022 and the reasons for why, for wherefore, for which and whatnot. I can't speak. For why they were my most disappointing. So the first up was a book that I read. When did I read it? A book that I read in February, or attempted to read, which was The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. And Holy Mary, Mother of God, did this shit for me. There was so much positive things being said about this book. So many positive comments. And people like R.J. Barker, fantasy, great. You know, recently you've probably noticed that a lot of my channel is based on fantasy. A lot of the books that I read, especially last year, were more so high fantasy and a lot of adult than it was like YA. I was creeping more towards that last year. This was not it for me. I was severely disappointed. I read about 84 pages of this, I think. All it was them cleaning a ship. It felt like all they did was clean the ship. I can't remember what words we used, but some of the words that we used to describe people, or what they were called, I can't remember what the word is now, but I immediately was like, what? It was something else that bothered me, I can't remember what it was. But it was just boring as hell, and I was so disappointed because that book was also gifted to me by a friend, and I've had to unhaul it because I'm never going to try and reread it. I'm not going to be that bitch that tries to push herself through a book that just is not my vibe at all. And I advocate for DNFing, despite how hard that was. More so that I've been gifted by a friend than the fact that other people like books and I didn't like it, because that happens all the time, and vice versa. Like, I don't like books that other people like, they don't like books that I like, you know, that shit happens all the time. But it was more so that it was a book that I didn't like that was gifted to me by a friend that I'd had on my wish list for a while, and that's the only thing that bothered me, and it was just really disappointing, not gonna lie. So what I haven't done is give you my stats for last year. I'm just gonna wind back and give you those stats. So stats wise, I read 180 books last year. Physically read from start to finish. Corpass says 187, but 7 of those books were DNFs. I don't class a book as read if I DNF it. Even if I DNF it halfway through, I might rate it on Goodreads. If I get it halfway through, I might class it. It's just, I'm a bit up in the air about things like that. But I DNF'd all of these books way earlier than halfway through. So 7 books were DNF, 180 completed books, which equates to 72,795 books, which page-wise, I think is my most ever. And then star rating wise, now I go, despite using Corpal last year, I just go on vibes and how I feel about it after the book, if it stays with me, if it makes me feel good or bad in any way, shape or form. If I have a strong feeling around towards a book, and if I really enjoyed it, I will give it 5 stars. This year I am doing more of a 0.5 rating system, so you might see less 5 stars, but some of these books deserved more than a 4, but last year I didn't do 0.5 stars. Some of the ones that I rated 5 stars, in hindsight might have been a 4.5, but I'm just going to go with what I've actually rated things. And that was a roundabout, that was a very long-winded way of saying some of these ratings might be skewed, because I didn't want to rate them a 4, and I wasn't doing half stars. Okay, that's what I mean. 119 5 stars, 50 4 stars, 6 3 stars, 5 2 stars, and 7 DNFs, which I put in Corpile as 1 star just so I could find them, so I could do my review at the end of the year. Overall, I haven't tracked anything other than that. Oh, I thought I read more adult. It was 57.1% was YA, and it says 42.9% was adult. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's tracked one, because I read quite a few middle grades last year. So I don't think that is fully accurate. I did mess around with the Corpile spreadsheet a little bit, so it probably has squiffed the things a little bit. I did read quite a few middle grade. Not a lot, not as many as I did the previous year, but I did read a few, including Frost Heart 3. Oh, I know that was in there somewhere. But anyway, back to disappointing reads. The next one is A Jasmine Throne. Now, I feel like this is a DNF. I feel like this was a disappointing read for me just because of how it was marketed, how it was hyped. It was part of the Sapphic trifecta. It was like pitched as this fantasy romance that was Sapphic, and you know, it was supposed to be that, and that is what I went going into it thinking. Again, you all know, if you've watched me for a long time, political, war, high fantasy, I enjoy. But market your books properly, because I went into this and it was just pure politics and like some classism issues in there and stuff, and the romance side of it was like a back seat, and that just totally ruined my enjoyment of it. I was just not down for it. It was just, I was annoyed. It was like mismarketed, like false, like marketed incorrectly, and I just couldn't find a way to enjoy the book. Had I have gone into it knowing it was more political and on all that kind of stuff, I would have gone into it with a different mindset, and I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. It might be something that I'll go back to. It is available on audio, so I might try with a different mindset going back to it at some point this year. It's not a priority to do so, but I might go back and try and listen to it and see if my thoughts and feelings are any different. But I just genuinely think this was one of those times where the marketing did it a disservice. It was just not the one, and I'm really, really sad about it, because that was one I was very excited about. The next one is A Year of the Witching, and this was disappointing because people were like, oh, it's an eerie, witchy book. And for any of you that don't know, I'm a Wiccan. I haven't practiced for a while, but I am a practicing Wiccan, and I love anything that has to do with witches, like anything, and especially if it's to do with like nature and, you know, those kinds of witches where like they make spells or they make potions and that kind of stuff. And when they do that in books, that really like makes my heart happy. And I was told this was a little bit of an eerie book, that the vibes were very like low-key, which was fine. I don't always need high impact war, high action book all the time. I'm happy with a bit of a low-key situation, but this just bored the shit out of me, and I have no idea what the hell went on, because I just zoned out and my brain was just like, nope, it was just not the one. And again, maybe it was a time of the fact that every other book I was reading at the time was a lot of like high impact, like action packed stuff, but also I just think that book wasn't for me, and then I've unhauled it now, so it's fine. Those are the most disappointing and my DNFs. I did some DNFs some other books, but they weren't of any consequence, to be honest. I have mentioned one in my December wrap up, but other than that, they were like indie books that had been sent years ago that were just not very well written, so I've DNF'd them. I'm not going to discuss one here because I don't want to, like, yeah, it was genuinely not well written, so I just don't want to like bash them on here. But on to some things that I'm really happy to talk about, which are my favourite reads. And I'm going to go month by month and just pick out my top 1 or 2, and one case 3 books from each month that I really enjoyed, because I can't pick a top 10, so you'll have to do with this. But I'm going to have to come back because my battery's dying. Alright, I'm back. I don't know how long my battery lost, because I did a quick charge and then back. So I'm going to go through my favourites. And I'll leave my favouriteest favourite, I know favouriteest isn't a word, don't at me. I'll leave my best till last. Because I want you to try and guess. Because it's going to be so difficult for you to guess what my favourites are. Or what my favourite book is of 2022. In general, we're going to go through the months I read them. My favourite each month. First, I read this in January, and that was Middle Game by Shawnee Maguire. My first ever Shawnee Maguire book. And oh my god, this was a Ro recommendation. Ro picked a book and a prompt for me from like the previous year where I did 12 books, 12 prompts for 2022. Ro came up first, and my god, was this a great recommendation. Every now and again I'll be like, oh my god, yeah, Middle Game. And the more that people talk about this book, when people have like popped up in live saying that they're reading it and all that, I'm just like, please read. You'll be confused for so much of the book, but it's just it's a great book. It follows two twins, Roger and Dodger. Two twins, obviously two twins, a pair of twins, like twins. It follows twins who they live in a world where alchemy exists. Like there's a mixture of like magic and science that just comes together, and there's a guy that wants everything for himself, and this sounds like a very generic fantasy plot, but it's really not, and I can't do it justice. I just highly recommend you read it. In February, unpopular opinion, it would be Hosab, and the reason why they gets top spot is because this was just jaw-dropping at the end. I had zero idea how it would end. I know that since this has come out, there's been people that have released videos, Becca the Book's being one of them, where it's like, do the series that SJM has done, do they like, are they from the same universe and all that kind of stuff, like do they connect or whatever. I haven't watched that video yet because I haven't read the Throne of Glass series, and yes, I know, I will at some point, fingers crossed this year, read the Throne of Glass series, but we'll just have to see. March. This was the month of 2 books. I cannot pick a top one, but one of them I can't tell you till the end. Nevernight, my first read of my second ever J. Kristoff book, and oh my god, he did not disappoint. Like Mia and Trick and Mr. Kindly, the snappy banter, she's a badass, he's a brooding, like Trick's a brooding character, Mr. Kindly is just very witty, and the audiobook for this, the audio just like increases the enjoyment of this book. The book was already here, like top tier anyway, and it elevated it. It really did. I would say the audio is better to take in if you're not used to footnotes, because the narrator does a great job of giving you the footnotes, and it's easier to read audibly and some of the footnotes are pretty long, so audio is probably the best, or an immersive reading situation where you do a mixed media approach may be the best way forward for this. But either way, I highly recommend you read this. April was my main introduction, my awakening to the Bound and the Broken series by Ryan Cahill. I read The Fall in March, and I was just like, this was 5 stars, this was really good. Gives me a very John Gwynne-esque vibe in his style of writing, but let's just see how the rest of the series go. And Blood and Fire is book 1, and my god, did that pack a punch. It is such a good book. It's very high fantasy, war, Chosen One trope is in there, but he's done so well. There's dragons, there's different types of magic, I can't even put into words the love that I have for these books and how immersed I was. I think I read this more or less all on the way back to and from Becca's house for her birthday. A little bit when I was at Becca's, and the majority I read on the way back home from Becca's. And I was sat on the coach and I needed a breather. I needed to take an actual breath away from the book because things happened in it and I was just caught up in everything. And I have to do the same with Lady Midnight this month. Like, sometimes everything just happens at once. I need to just take a back step and just breathe. For not a bad reason, it's a good reason, but you just need to let everything sink in. Do you know what I mean? And if you like high fantasy, you like dragons, you like battles, you just like great writing. And if you enjoy John Gwynne, I 100% believe in my heart of hearts that you will enjoy Ryan Carl's writing. To top it off, the author is also a great guy. So, and he's indie. Support the indie self-pub authors. Although I think his new books are being picked up by a publisher, but either way, this series started off as indie. So currently he's an indie author, self-pubbed. Go forth and enjoy Ryan Cahill. And that sounds so wrong. I'm so sorry. Enjoy his books is what I mean. In comes May, and this seems to be the time that I decided to pick up more contemporaries, and behind you is just a full bookcase. It has like 2 longish shelves and like 3 shorter shelves, like in a box thing, of contemporaries, purely contemporaries. And my favourite of May was Hook, Line and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. I did read It Happens One Summer the month before, and I buddy read Hook, Line and Sinker with Tori. And Fox is a word, is a person, is a being of which I am just, he's great. The relationship between him and the main, I want to say the name of the main character is called Hannah, but I don't know. At this moment in time, Fox is just on the brain, okay? And this is my first read that was like, that had plot. Obviously the Tessa Bailey books were my first reads that were kind of smutty, but also had a plot alongside them that were not fantasy. So I've read dark fantasy romance before, as you all know. I absolutely love KJ Sutton's books. They are dark fantasy romance with fate and all that good stuff, but these were the first books that I picked up that were just kind of like smutty, but also had a plot, and that sort of got me intrigued and interested in more adult romance. I do have a couple of YA romance on my shelves, but this piqued my interest in contemporaries again and adult romance, and I am all for the spicing books. In we come with June, and there are 2 books in this, and I didn't know which one to pick, so I'm going to be that basic bitch that's going to pick both. So the first one is Ruin of Kings. This is when we started It's All About Fantasy Book Club with Chelsea and a Kay from A Pinch of Happy. We started a book club and we all love fantasy, and it was like, let's start with the Ruin of Kings. And this series started off so well. Didn't end the best, but it started off well. This is one of my favourites, and it was just the unique way of telling the story. So we start off with Kieran, who starts telling his story. He's in a prison, talking to a monster, and he's trying to tell his backstory. And she's like, no, I don't want to hear it from that point in your life. Let's just go back a little bit further to a point in his time in his life where he wasn't really wanting to discuss that far back. You know, not great memories, this poor kid. But then it goes into her telling it from an earlier timeline, him telling it from the timeline he started at, and then they converge at the end. Like the whole story thing, and there was like 2 narrators, and it was just very well done. So well done. And I was just like, by Jove, I think I really enjoyed this way of writing. This I've never seen this before in the books that I've read, and I really enjoyed it, and it's just stuck with me. And Kieran as a character just stuck with me as soon as he hit the page, and just we got to know him, and you wanted the best for him, the poor sod. But you know, you'll find out if you've read the series whether or not it ends well for Kieran, or whether it doesn't. Read the series and let me know your thoughts on the final books. Second one, I still want to get this in hardback, and I still want to read the second book of the series, but it's Bone Shard Daughter. Now, I've seen people reviewing this and raving about this, and I wasn't sure what I would think of it, because some people are like, oh my god, great, it's amazing, and then there's some people that are just like, no. It was exactly what I wanted and more. There were some things that happened in this that I was just shook to my core, and I did not see coming, and I was just kind of like, like, not gonna lie, until I went back and started looking through my books of the year, I forgot that I'd read this the time that I did. I thought this was in a 2021 read, so I wasn't planning on putting it on this list until I read. I was like, oh, I read it like in June. And time is a concept that I have no idea of, okay? But now that I know it was in 2022 that I read it, I really want, and it's just given me that and I've also not put that on my series I've started but not continued. I did a whole video in Vlogmas and I forgot that that was a book that I started and not continued. This is why I need to track things better, which I will be doing in 2023. But I really want to continue that series, but I want it in hardback, and book one is notoriously difficult to get a hold of in hardback, and I don't want to get the rest of the series as it comes out in hardback if I can't get the first one. I don't want the Bone Shard Emperor Daughter series, I don't know what the series is called, to do the same thing to me again and hurt my heart that way, okay? I can't deal, okay? July, we're back around to contemporaries, and this fantasy bitch is giving you 2 contemporaries, that's 3, 2 contemporaries in the month of July as her top books. Both of these are mega recommendations and they are just behind you. And this is The Roommate and You Deserve Each Other. I could not pick between these two, and I love them for various different reasons. And podcast book was this. That's not a phrase that you should be using, Lisa. That's not proper English. This was a podcast book, and it was the first one that we did. Me and Jem had a great discussion about this. I will link the podcast if I can find a link. But this is a spicy. It's a very spicy, and it's just so good. There was a thing in here that I didn't expect. I'd heard it got a bit steamy, but yeah, it doesn't explicitly tell you on the back what it is that might be the issue between the two protagonists that could cause a relationship not to work out. But honestly, if you read this and you know, yeah, I feel it too. But this one was a surprise for me. Well, it wasn't a surprise because it's a Meg rec, and so far she's not done me wrong with the recs. Obviously The Roommate came from her, and various other people after that, but initially it was Meg. But Meg also gifted me this book, so thank you very much, Meg. And this is like a second chance romance, kind of. Basically, there's a couple that are due to get married, and they're both having doubts, and they're already together at the beginning of this book, and there's nothing drastic like they've cheated or anything like that. It's just, it feels very real, like there's a real relationship that's going through a real turbulent time, and it's not over dramatized. It's just people figuring their shit out. And initially I did not like the main characters, and if you read it, you might understand why. Poor Meg, I forgot to give her my thoughts on this. I was just like, oh, I don't really like Naomi and Nick, or specifically Naomi. And that was the first and last thing I told her while I was reading the book. And then I devoured it and loved it, and then didn't give her an update. So again, I've apologised many times since then, but I'm sorry, Meg, for doing that to you. But honestly, this is another book that does the miscommunication trope very well, and it's not really, it's like a lack of communication that has led to this situation being a thing, but for valid reasons. And it's not, and I've mentioned it, I think I've mentioned this in a video that I've literally just filmed as well. It's not a case of like half hearing a conversation from one person's side and then making an assumption about a whole situation and a whole like set of feelings, and then making your thoughts about a person based on half-heard conversation or a misheard thing. It's nothing stupid like that that annoys me. And it's like, did you hear the other half of the conversation? No. Well, why have you made this whole thing out of like a half-heard conversation? It annoys me. But this is not that. These two will forever be recs that I give thank you to Meg. Also thank you to Meg for another fave that's coming up. Next up we have August, Flames of Mira by Claire Harmon. I'll put it here. I do have a lot of these physical books, all of these physical books lying around somewhere, but they're at places I can't get right now. And I mean, my mind's enough of a mess as it is. I don't want to be getting all these books out to put them back again 10 minutes later. So you'll have to do with pictures. So Flames of Mira, it follows a guy called Ig who not had the best childhood, as it seems to be for a lot of these people that are protagonists in these fantasy books. I mean, the torture they go through in life in general
just to be like not have the best adulthood either is just crazy. But it's fun to read because it's not happening to me. That's the main thing. Anyway, another point. Claire Hammond, Flimsy Mirror, Ig, Jakar, same person. It's told from Jakar's perspective, and then there's a couple of other perspectives dotted in as well. But basically, he serves this prick. He tells him what to do. He says, Ig, do this, and Ig has to do it. And there's a reason behind that you find out. And he has to save these people, and he is like one of the most powerful elementals. The situation he grew up in was that there were these bands of different elements, and basically it's like a trial, like a ritual, and it's called an imbibing, where you have to go through that and basically you take the element into you, and if you can survive the situation that it puts your body in, then you can then wield that element. And I'm not explaining it very well. It's quite dark, this book, and I love the fact that it's all set in like an underground world. Everything is like underground. It's great, and nobody in this book is a good character. Everyone's morally great. Everyone does things and says things and they shouldn't, and it's just such a good read. I highly recommend. I can't wait for the next book to come out, because I want to know if the next book follows Ig in that world, or different people in that world, or what. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna come, because technically it wrapped up quite nicely. It could have just been left at just like a standalone, but also it did kind of leave a little bit of a peek open to a door that's like, well, it could lead to this instead. So it's like a fork in the road. We don't know where it's gonna go. Next up, we have in September, we have 3. Because I want to do a different authors in each month, I could literally give you the same author every time I read one of his books. But obviously Ryan Cahill, I did read Readalongs I in September. But to choose a different author, just so that I'm not rambling on about the same authors all the time. In September, I did also read Voice of War by Zach Argyle, another indie author. Oh my god. This is a world where if you have green eyes, you can weave with green threads. If you have blue eyes, you can weave with blue threads. And if you have brown eyes, then it means you are achromatic, which means you don't have the ability to weave any sort of threads at all. We meet Chris in this book, who's been tasked to unearth the plot and find the people behind the issue of thread weavers going missing. He meets another one of the characters that's quite prominent in this book, and that's all I'm going to say about that bit. But in this world, you only are supposed to have these three eye colours: brown, blue and green. However, when a baby is born, before they open their eyes, they go through this, I just want to say ritual, where they find out their eye colour. Put drops in their eyes and they find out the eye colour. Chris's child is born with amber eyes, and they know not what this means. So they go on the run, that is all I'm telling you. But it's great, and I can't wait to get it. I've got the rest of the series up there, and it's just the best. I did also pick 2 other books from September because I couldn't pick just one. Another shocker for me was The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I did not expect to love this as much as I did. This follows a bunch of retirees that basically try and solve a murder. That is like the most basic synopsis I can give you, but the banter and the witty characters, and it just goes to show, and I think the way that Richard Osman like has described this when he talks about it is that he's trying to show that just because you're old and you're in a care home or whatever, a residential home, doesn't mean that everyone loses their ability to function on a normal level. It's just great. It really is just, it's a slightly, I'd say it's more of a cozy murder mystery than like a high octane one, like, do you know what I mean? But it's just so good. I highly recommend. I audiobooked this alongside reading my mum's physical copy, and I really do want a physical copy of all of these books, and I want to read the rest of the series. The final one for this month, I cannot not mention this, and it's Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now this book threw me for a loop. This generally isn't what I read. I read fantasy, but this is not really the fantasy that I am used to. It's kind of like a dark academia with a slight fantasy twist because it has a little bit of magic in, but the magic in it is not forefront of the story. The magic in here, in this, and like it is sort of integral to like the way the world works. It's really hard to explain without spoilers, but these social discussions about race and classism and like privilege and just so many things are just tucked into this book. There's like prejudice and discrimination. There's also discussion about sexuality in here, and it's not just a book. It taught me a lot about linguistics as well. Like, I didn't come here for a lesson, but I'm glad I got one. And it gives the thing is with R.F. Kuang is when she's talking to you about things in this book, it's not in a preachy way, it's not in a condescending way, it's not to make the reader feel like they're stupid, but it's explaining things in a way that you're like, oh, right, okay, I get that, let's move on, I understand that, and it's just in a very easily digestible way. I just highly recommend that you read it. And then we have October. There are also 2 books in this. We have 2 quite different books as well. We have The Other Ones by Fran Hart. This was a podcast book. This follows a young lad who is struggling to come to terms with certain things that have happened in his life, and it's sort of pitched as a bit of a mystery with like a paranormal element to it, but it's so much more than that. Like, the humour in this and just the description of things is so British. It is so good. It's one of the first books I've read in a very long time where the British things are British, and like just like sayings and things. And I know that I think the author is British anyway, but it's just so refreshing to see a book that just depicts a group of teenagers that are typical teenagers. It's not over dramatized, it's not giving somebody a particular trait just because that's what the kind of traits people get. Like, the main character, Sal or Salem, whatever you want to call him, is trying to deal with some things, and it's a typical thing of like, we will talk about this, you know, he's getting a bit stressed, so he sits outside and has a fag. Do you know what I mean? Like, sorry, a cig if you're American, cigarette, smoke. I forget that some Americans watch my channel. Sorry, a cigarette. Yeah, it's just that's just a typical like, oh, I'm stressed, I'm gonna go out and have a cig. Do you know what I mean? And then we've got Pax, who is just a cinnamon roll who needs to be protected at all times. And if anybody ever hurts that kid, he's just adorable. He's unabashedly himself. He will wear like brightly coloured knitted shirts. There's one point we see him in a pair of pants that, or trousers that Sal thinks are pyjamas, but they're not. They're just like really cosy trousers. It's just, Pax is just the best. It was just such a fun book, and the resolution in this book. And the thing that, like, the mystery that we're unravelling was 100% not what I expected. It just came out of left field, but it was so well done. And then we've got Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. Oh my god. Was dumbstruck by this book. I was so shocked I couldn't cry. I should have cried at what happened. But it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was just sat in my bed, minding my own business, reading myself a lovely YA book, when Stephanie Garber was like, nope, we're gonna ruin your brain. Can't wait for book 3, which isn't out until near the end of the year, but I'm not ready, but I'm ready. Are you ready? I don't know if I am or not. Okay, so I did read quite a few good books in October, but one I'm going to give an honourable mention to because it was still a 5 stars, but the other 2 did beat it with regards to like the feels, and that is Gideon the Ninth. I probably read this with Alice. That was the most confusing book I've ever read in my life, but it was so good. It's not everyone's cup of tea, I get that. And I thought it was fantasy, but apparently it's more sci-fi. And the audiobooks for this, audiobooks, so good. November, there are 2 books, again very different. First one is All the Fields by Olivia Dade. I read, spoiler alert, I don't know if it was earlier that year or the year before, I don't know when I read, spoiler alert. But All the Fields is a lot better than the first one. I loved the first one, but the second one was just top tier.
Alex is me in male form. The star of the show for that book for me is Alex. And basically Alex is the friend of the main character in the first book, and he's got himself into a little bit of trouble, and his producers are like, you need to stop getting into trouble, and I'm going to assign you like a babysitter so that you don't get into any more trouble. However, the things that Alex has done to get into trouble might not be the big bad thing that everyone thinks it is. They've just assumed because of his reputation that it is. Ruminate on that and then read all the feels. And then something very different is I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Again with this book, I was so deeply disturbed at things that this person, I was so deeply disturbed at what Jeanette went through. I had no way of crying. It was just shocking. And every time you think that you've got to the most shocking bit, it's like, oh no, no, you haven't. And also, the way that Jeanette McCurdy narrates this, that woman is so strong. Like, I know she wrote it and it would have gone through edits and things like that, and she would have had to reread it, and it was her life. She's going to therapy to get through what she's been through in her life, but that must still be hard to reflect on. Regardless of how many therapy sessions you had, it must still be difficult. And then for her to sit in a studio and narrate it as well. I did cry at the first bit because it was like the opening part, and if you've read it, you know what I mean, before it goes into the story. And it was just the fact that the one thing that she says that she thinks will be the thing is just the most devastating words to read. And then finally, in December, we have 2 books again, before I get to my favourite of the year, and that is Hunger Games, and I forget the author. I know I'm behind with this. I did a very impromptu vlog about my experience with this book, and I am kicking myself for not reading this before now. It is so good. Like, it still holds now. Do you know what I mean? It still holds up now. And I'm just, I don't know what to say. You've already everyone who's watching me right now has probably either seen the film or read the book or both, but I haven't, and I was totally brand new to this whole world. It's just, Katniss is a badass, and the emotional rollercoaster I went on because I didn't know who the fuck I could trust, and I was messaging Tori like, this person I can't trust, this person's gonna do this person, oh no wait, no that person, no, like honestly she was just chuckling away at me because I just couldn't figure out what my feelings were. And then the end of the first book I was just kind of like, but where are we gonna go now? And then the final one before my favourite of like the year, possibly all time right now, is Wolfsong by TJ Klune. This is a buddy read that was organised by Jem from Bookish Gems. But buddy read it with a bunch of people, including Meg from 12 Books a Day and Emma. Tori was a bit behind on the buddy read. I don't know if she's caught up, but obviously you know that Becca and Chloe did read it, but they have their thoughts on it. Which is really fun because it just goes to show that we can all like, a lot of us like the same books, but then on this particular book, like, there was a big divide on it. But I absolutely loved this book. I fell in love with Ox and his personality and his whole being within a couple of chapters. I just wanted to protect him at all times. He went through shit, this kid. And he didn't know how to love himself, didn't know how to take compliments, he just doesn't think much of himself, and it's so horrible to read, but makes me just want to like hug him. And the found family in this, like, the whole book was just a massive hug. From like, you've got your family that he was growing up with, and then the new family that come into the picture, and then the immediate connection that people feel that isn't just romantic, it's just an immediate like protection thing. And just the fantasy element of this is great, and like, there's werewolves, for fuck's sake. I love myself a fantasy book, but it was just following Ox through his life as well, and the relationships that he has with different people, and how those bonds tie him to that person, and him struggling with feelings, and
the way that it broke my heart at times as well, because you get immediately connected. The way that TJ Klune builds this world and builds these characters, you immediately just want to protect every single one of them. You want nothing bad to happen. You want everything to conveniently be okay, and it just isn't. And I love him for an author for being like that, but as a reader as well, I'm just like, oh, you broke my heart. I cannot wait for the rest of the series. I'm going to have to wait till they come out on audio and come out physically with the special editions, because they're just being traditionally published. So I don't, like, the old audiobooks have been taken off Audible, so I'm really annoyed that we'll have to wait, but I highly recommend. There is a trope in this that some people might not like and might make you feel uncomfortable, or you might not enjoy. So if you want to know what that trope is, I mentioned this in my December wrap up, please just message me, and if you don't mind spoilers, I will let you know what the trope is and what, so that you know whether or not you're going to like it going in. If you're not bothered about spoilers and you just like werewolves and you like a found family vibe and you like to follow, you like a very character driven book predominantly, then you will love this book. But we come to the final book of 2022. My favouriteest book of the year, / my favourite book that I've read ever to date. And I'm 35, so I've read a lot of books. Are you surprised? Are you shook at the chorus? Did you see this coming? Of course you did. I already have 3 editions of this. I've talked about this author non-stop. I've talked about this book non-stop since I read it back in February, March. I've talked about this book at every single possible time that I can. I met the author finally in October, and Travis is such an amazing guy in person. He's so sweet. He signed the 2 editions that I had when I met him, and this is a personalised copy now. Look, he signed it. I mean, am I ever going to get rid of this? No, never. Like, this is going to be, like, honestly, this is a hug in a book. It's about an orc who's tired of travelling, and she decides that she's going to open a coffee shop. And it's about found family, and it's about, it's called high fantasy, low stakes. Obviously high fantasy because of the characters that are involved, but low stakes because, I wouldn't necessarily say really low stakes, but it's not like high epic battles and stuff. But there are times when this makes me very sad. And you do follow, there's like a little light romantic thing, but it's like based on like a friendship foundation. It's just so good. And if you are the kind of person who likes cozy books, if you're not into your cozy books, then you're probably not going to like it. But I would still probably recommend to everyone at least give it a go. Just don't tell me if you don't like it. But it's just, I mean, I've seen people who said cozy fantasy is not normally my thing, who have loved this book. So even if it's not your thing, just maybe go on Kindle Unlimited if it's on there and give it a go. And then just buy all the copies you possibly can, like me. You can't get this copy anymore because this is the indie version. But honestly, it is just, I have reread this like 2 or 3 times. And I am always in the mood to reread this. I have to actively try not to reread this all the time, because it's just, I can't. I've got it on audio, so I can literally just skim through it in a couple of hours if I want. I can literally just read this in a couple of hours when I'm feeling a bit shit about myself. I don't know, I think that this book is amazing anyway, but this hit me at a particular low point last year, and this just made me feel good. So it has like a special place in my heart because of that as well, but the book itself is also amazing. So I have got every man and his dog to read this. If you are watching this video and you have not read this book, go out and get it, read it, love it, and tell me you love it, and that'll be all. The second book from Travis is coming out, but it's not coming out till the back end of this year. But it is what it is. We're vibing, we're all good. We are all Gucci. So, I can't believe I just said that. This is a very long video, I apologise. I'll edit it down as much as I possibly can. I do ramble quite a bit at certain points. However, if you like me and you like my videos and you want to see more from me, please like, comment, subscribe and share and do all the good stuff. And leave a comment down below if you don't want to say anything, but you want to let me know you're here. Black heart is much appreciated. And as always, recommendation Google form is down below for you to recommend books that you'd like me to read, that you think I will enjoy. And until next time, have a good one, guys.
Every time I fall in love, it seems to be at the wrong time.